Hi everybody, welcome to this video where we'll be talking about Gibraltar and the post-Brexit treaty. Here is Paul, who's going to give his expert view on how this is working out. So no pressure there, Paul. But yeah, we're talking about the kind of post-Brexit treaty with the EU that kind of governs what's happening here in Gibraltar. So a lot of people considering moving to Gibraltar. Actually, some here are always reaching out, asking about this. So, Paul, what's going on?
I appreciate your introduction and using the word expert alongside my name. It's very reassuring, but I'm no expert on the subject matter because nothing has been agreed. But essentially, it's an interesting, yeah, it's quite interesting because everyone has different views. And basically, what it is post-Brexit, there's no treaty between the EU and Gibraltar with regards to certain aspects which they're trying to make easy, in the same way that Southern Ireland and Northern Ireland try to maintain some border fluidity and ensure that it has no negative impact on economic activity. So Gibraltar is no different. There's 15,000 Spanish workers crossing every day, or at least um, people residing in Spain and working in Gibraltar, and and the treaty aims to protect that, but equally, Gibraltar is looking for some fluidity at the border to make sure that the economy can continue to prosper, and they have to find a solution because we are now essentially outside the EU. So the discussion has been not public. They've kept it very quiet. But the little information that is known is that Gibraltar is looking at having access to Schengen without being members of Schengen, so they can access the Schengen area and have that fluidity without full membership, and that requires some outside of the box thinking because there's all kinds of issues that need to be addressed on both sides to make sure that everyone is happy and there's no political undertones to any agreement. So about a year ago, the Gibraltar government came out following a meeting in Brussels saying that they were within kissing distance of an agreement. Um, I think time has shown that that is not the case. Uh, Although one can understand that these are complex negotiations and there's no certainty that there will be a treaty at the end of the negotiation. But it seems as if all parties, both the European Union and Spain on the one hand, and the UK government and the Gibraltar government on the other, no one wants to leave their place on the table. And they're trying to iron out any issues which are, I would say, there could be some red lines, or they're trying to find a solution which is acceptable for both parties. And I think there's goodwill. And I think that barring a month ago where Spain was trying to apply a bit of pressure, I think generally speaking, all parties have been silent on the negotiation to try and avoid speculation and the media intrusion, um, um, you know, blocking a possible deal, because all you need is the media to twist um, anything regarding any, you know, difficult aspects of the agreement, and that could derail the process and end up in a no deal. And a no deal would be harmful for Gibraltar, no doubt, but also let's not forget that it would be damaging for Spain too. And that's why everyone stays on the negotiating table, trying to be reasonable and find a solution which is win-win for everyone. For Gibraltar, I mean, for people who are tax resident in Gibraltar, either now or in the future, I think it gives them reassurance that the border is going to be more fluid than it was in the past. It's a bit ironic that we had an EU border pre 2020, and we had all kinds of issues. And potentially now there could be a treaty and the border could be more fluid than it was when it was an EU border. But that's life, yeah. There was a lot of politics then, and I think everyone is thinking more practically now when you're faced with an event that could be disrupting for the economy, not just of Gibraltar, but the surrounding area. Um, but yes, fluidity at the border and the ability to restore one of the benefits of EU membership that we lost, which is that should not be overlooked. Now post-Brexit, you've got UK nationals can spend 90 days every 180 days in Spain, or rather within the Schengen area, in the EU area, but they cannot have 180 days like they used to in the past to run concurrently. So I think that the treaty might, because we don't know. There's been no public um, no public information regarding how the negotiations are progressing, but it would appear that maybe one of the benefits is that Gibraltar tax residents could potentially spend 180 days consecutively within the EU Schengen area. But I think border fluidity is important for UK nationals, because they may feel that they are, in a very small place and they can't get out. The reality is, whether there's a treaty or not, I think common sense will prevail, and the border is not going to be better or worse than it was in the past. I would be surprised because there's no winners, yeah? There's
Yeah,
just losers.
exactly. Yeah.
And I think, if I'm right, Matt, and please correct me, but I think they were going to introduce in the middle of November last week, they should have introduced, on the 9th, an EU-wide system of electronic um, passport control. And I
Yes.
think it was the northern countries, surprisingly, Germany,
Maybe
Holland,
Switzerland.
and
Yeah.
Switzerland, that weren't ready to introduce this electronic system for people coming into the Schengen, into the EU. But that is going to come, and I don't think that will necessarily delay matters at the border. But who knows? It depends how fast these things are, because if there's 15,000 people crossing every day and it takes 2 minutes per person, then they could cause tailbacks. And again, it's difficult to foresee now how that's going to work in practice. But the important thing, Matt, is that everyone is staying on the negotiating table, and there's goodwill on all sides to try and, arrive at an agreement which is possibly politically not um, politically hard to swallow on both sides of the border,
Yeah.
because in every negotiation is give and take, and you have to make compromises so long as they are non-political. But an agreement would be highly beneficial. There might be, as I said, more fluidity if there's a treaty now than there was during our days within the EU. And I think quite recently, over this weekend, I think there were some British MPs saying that even though things have gone quiet and there's concern that there will be no treaty, that things are happening behind the scenes. So this is what we hear. So whatever we say in this, webinar is based on hearsay rather than facts, because there's no facts. But we do know that there's progress. But sometimes the 0.1% of everything that's being negotiated, the most difficult things to overcome and to get broad agreement on. But yes, a treaty with the EU would be highly welcome and beneficial. And I
Yeah.
think that could be open the doors to attracting more UK nationals into Gibraltar, because they would feel, okay, we are here, as you said, the best of both worlds, yeah. But I can still go into Spain without having too many issues.
Yeah. I guess, it's time will tell is I guess a conclusion. I think the one thing is, there's often kind of speculation in it's coming from, as you say, Paul, no facts, and the fact is that the border at the moment, and I say this as someone who crosses on a very regular basis, is not often a problem. Okay, you've got to show your passport for those bits. You have to get stamped. Okay, sometimes they're asking where you are and what your intention is. But I know a lot of people who've come to me who haven't gone through the border say, "Oh, it's terrible at the moment. They're blocking everyone going through," and that's not the case. I think occasionally there's days where the Spanish side may do more checks, and there was an incident a few weeks ago where there was a miscommunication and there was a block. Um, but I think, yeah, as you say, the fact that they've been in talks for so long is positive. It's obviously going to be complicated because you've effectively got four parties, haven't you? Spain, the EU, Gibraltar, and the British side. But yeah, I guess those expecting us to have this insight into those negotiations yeah,
But you've raised a very valid point, Matt, because we talk about two parties. In essence, there's four,
yeah,
and the EU position might differ from Spain. And there's been murmurings that there have been instances where the EU takes a different line to Spain. But equally, the UK might have its own interest that it seeks to protect in this treaty, which run contrary to the interests of Gibraltar and vice versa. So you are quite right. There's not two parties. There's two parties, but there's actually four. And they all have different interests that they seek to protect. So that's why it's complex and it's not easy to arrive at a treaty which is acceptable to all sides and where everyone feels that they've won. But you're right, the border by and large has been fairly smooth.
yeah,
And occasionally there's, shenanigans um, for whatever reason, but that's life. Um, but besides that, it's been flowing more smoothly, I would even argue, than when we were in the EU,
yeah.
because it has been fairly smooth. And if I may say this, tongue in cheek, in jest, but this is, in my opinion, true. I mean, if there's anything which I think is to the advantage of people tax resident in Gibraltar, is that the Spanish guards can sustain heavy checks for a long period. They get tired fairly quickly. I think from my experience, being born and bred in Gibraltar, and over the years, they'll go very tough, but by day five, they're pretty much exhausted, and they'd rather have it a bit easier. So it would remain to be seen how tough they would be and whether they can maintain that over a prolonged period of time, or whether they ease up at times. Clearly, they can make it very difficult. There's no denying that. But whether they can have the stamina to maintain a hard border on a daily basis, because it's not fun working there and checking every passport. Matt, can you
Yeah.
imagine, from waving people past to having to implement tough border checks? I mean, it's tough. In fairness to Spain, on the Spanish side, even if you and I were doing it, we'll get exhausted after a while. Yeah,
Yeah, of
we want
course.
to make it. We want to make our lives easier. So, yeah, there's that aspect too to consider. But yeah, I think as soon as something is, as soon as there's any breaking news, we'll clearly communicate it to our subscribers, because I think it's a game changer for some people.
But I think there's one more point I picked on you said earlier, actually, Paul, is that if they do come to an agreement, that's going to be positive for both sides, but it's going to make Gibraltar even more attractive to UK nationals. So then we're going to see a rush in people coming in or wanting to come in. And of course, Gibraltar's a relatively small place. There's only room for so few, and Gibraltar may have to change his rules. So you may have people thinking, okay, well, I'll wait until the talks go through, um, and then I plan my relocation then. But by then, could that be too late?
I would agree, Matt. I mean, we've seen it ourselves in the past 12, 18 months, and almost on a month by month basis, the number of inquiries we're getting is just it's scaling up by the day.
Absolutely, yeah.
That is a fact. That's not an opinion. That's a fact. So there's demand, and you're right. I mean, there's a limit to what Gibraltar, can absorb, and how, and in terms of how much they can absorb and over what period. Because if they start building, clearly that gives them scope for a greater expansion, but it can't happen so quickly. So the rules might change. We go back to what we said in another of our webinars, that people delay and think things stay the same forever. They don't.
Yeah.
Things change. And if you're thinking of moving, move now. Don't wait for the conditions to be perfect. I'll wait till I have a treaty. I'll wait to see what happens with my pension. Let's give it another 18 months and then I'll decide. You know, Either you move or you don't. Because by the time you make that decision, the rules may have changed and that's it. You can't move. You never know.
Yeah. There's always a reason to wait. If somebody wants to wait, they can give themselves a reason. But if you want to move, there's 100 reasons to move. But we understand, it's a big event. I think in the UK they say moving house is one of the three most stressful things you can do. So moving to another country increases that. But I mean, it's a wonderful opportunity as well. Perfect. Well, Paul, thank you for that insight.
Sure.
It's greatly appreciated. I will retain my description of you as an expert. Um, but anybody who wants watching this webinar, please subscribe for more video content. If you're thinking of moving, get in touch and we'll see if we can help you out. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.